Welcome to Lanterns Live. It's Ralph, and I'm here with Johnny, who looks like got his hands on his Guy Gardner.
I did.
Powers Guy Gardner.
The extra John Stewart lamp is really wobbly in his hand.
Yeah, this one I'm using, whatever it is, whatever toy this came with, he holds on real tight.
That's good.
I forget which toy that came with, but yeah. What are your thoughts on the Guy Gardner?
He's good. I remember when I was on with you and Chris and Jay. Yeah. Jay was talking about he felt like the detail on the belt wasn't there. Mine seems really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's got bad eyes. My detail on the belt is really good too. Just let's get all the crotches in there. Mine won't focus. You probably have a camera built for like doing this.
It's just my iPhone.
Oh yeah, well I'm just using my Mac camera.
But yeah, he looks good. He looks real good. I'm glad that I was able to get him.
Me too.
Finally.
Was it Amazon finally sent it to you?
Yeah,
Or did you find
Amazon finally sent it to me. Like it was the Monday after we streamed.
Oh, okay. That doesn't help. So it's like 4 days late.
Or no, it was Saturday. I think it came Saturday.
Oh, so it's like right after. Today we are talking about Green Lantern, the animated series, Part 2, Manhunter Menace. Did you know this was called Manhunter Menace?
I did not. I don't think I did.
So there's a Blu-ray of like the whole entire series, but like the cheapy DVDs where they'll like throw a Lego character in with it or something.
Okay.
They split the season into two. The first one, Rage of the Red Lanterns. The second one, the Manhunter Menace, which, I mean, yes. What's kind of nice though, okay, so it's not really like that's not really the big deal of season 1 part 2.
Yeah.
But it's nice that they don't spoil it. What the whole like, the big bad of season 2 is. So that's nice. Yeah. What are your thoughts on part 2 versus part 1?
I like them both. I don't know if I can pick that I like one part more than the other. Right. I think there were some more interesting things going on in the second one, at least to me, because I'm not familiar with some stuff. I thought it was really interesting to see the Anti-Monitor without the Monitor or Crisis. Like, because I've only ever seen the Anti-Monitor involved in Crisis with the Monitor. So I was like, wait a minute, I know the Anti-Monitor, I know the character. What's he doing here? So I thought it was really interesting the way he was utilized. And then I did start this. Not terribly far, but I also
was going to ask. So, like, you weren't like the biggest, like, most massive Green Lantern fan ever.
No, either
am I.
Casual fan.
Yeah. So, did watching the series kind of help you be like, kind of nudge you towards reading that, where you're like, oh, okay.
I actually always wanted to read this, and never got around to it, and Vactor actually gifted this to me for my birthday this year. That was very nice of him. Shout out to Vactor. But I've been curious about this story and the Lantern Corps ever since, like, when it was first out. I first learned of it when I think Mattel still had the action figure license for DC at the time, and they were doing all the different lanterns. Like there was, Black Lantern, Batman, all those different action figures, like Wonder Woman as a Star Sapphire. Like they had every figure you could imagine out as a lantern of some sort. And I'm like, this is neat. What's this all about? And I just never got around to reading it.
It was a huge deal, which is crazy because
it was massive.
Because up until then, Green Lantern was still like a lower tier character. He was always around, but nobody, I mean, there wasn't any movies or shows or anything. You had Jon Stewart in the GLA show and stuff like that. Speaking of Jon Stewart, okay, let's just talk about this real quick. Before we really, really dive into this series, some sort of newsy, non-news stuff happened this week. It's one of those things where everybody knows I'm a Green Lantern fan. Everyone I know, I'm their friend who's the biggest Green Lantern fan. Like,
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
my aunts, my mother-in-laws, my mom, random friends from high school, everybody on the internet who follows me in any sort of capacity knows that I'm a giant Green Lantern fan. And so what happens is I get messages from all over the place.
That's like me with
Anything
Star Trek
happens
and Pearl
because
Jam.
right. But I mean, luckily with you, like Star Trek's like a thing that like happens like a kind of a lot. There's
Yeah.
several shows. I'm sure you get stuff like Lower Decks is canceled or whatever happens. I'm sure you get some of that stuff. But since there's rarely Green Lantern news, anytime there's any news, like it hits me like from every corner of the galaxy. It's crazy. Cloned Avengers wants to bring it up. I'll bring it up because I think I'm kind of excited that there is any sort of rumblings in mainstream media about the character Green Lantern. This week, it was reported that Josh Brolin was offered the role of Hal Jordan in Lanterns. Whether he decided to take it or not is unknown. Whether it's true or not, I don't even think, because I went and read the first article because I get like Green Lantern news. Like here's the deal. If 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 you like, it takes me like 10 minutes to find out any Green Lantern news. Like it's really quick. Like it's there. Like I always know it. And so I read the first article about this Josh Brolin thing, and it was literally like our, so I don't even know what the site was that reported it. It was something I wasn't familiar with, and it's like exclusive. We've heard that Josh Brolin was offered Green Lantern, and that was it. That was it. Great. I'm sure a lot of people have been offered, but then people run with that and say that he is Green Lantern, and the news just like it turns into news. It's like a non-story that turns into news. Cloned Avenger says, now I'm not sure about all this. Josh Brolin, Matthew McConaughey, Ewan McGregor, Timothy Olyphant, and Chris Pine. Apparently, I don't know. Those are the rumors for Hal. I think of that group, I would say Chris Pine would be the one to go with because he's still on the younger side. Like I get what they're trying to do with the show Lanterns and make Hal a very like an older seasoned Lantern, but unless they're doing multiverse stuff in the new James Gunn sort of DC Studios like universe, I don't want to be pigeonholed with the old Hal Jordan. So I think Chris Pine would be a nice age. He's probably roughly around my age. Sarah disagrees. Come on, it's Sergeant Gutierrez's son from Chips. Like we all love Chris Pine. So I don't know what's going on with this.
His take on Kirk, now that I've never thought about it before, but his Captain Kirk has definite Hal Jordan vibes, right? Like I could see that.
And and I would say that the Hal Jordan from the series has Captain Kirk vibes from Green Lantern animated series. I feel like they're very similar characters. When did I'm not gonna remember. Never mind. I stop in that question before it starts. Because I think okay, I'm just gonna ask it. When was Star Trek? 1966?
You are correct. Yeah.
Oh, cool. And then Hal Jordan in the comics, the Silver Age, this is the part where I feel stupid, is I don't know this fact and when Showcase 22 happened, where Hal Jordan was introduced. But I feel like at the time in the 60s, with the space race and test pilots being sort of like celebrities, your Chuck Yeagers and Neil Armstrong, all those dudes, John Glenn.
So I just watched Fly Me to the Moon.
Yeah. So I feel like that was in sort of the consciousness at the time in the 60s. And so I feel like Hal Jordan was introduced in 1959. But all of that stuff, I feel like the test pilot stuff was all like really gaining ground. And so I feel like that's what heroes became instead of Westerns, It became, these pilots and these astronauts, and I could see how, like, I think Captain Kirk and Hal Jordan come from the same DNA. So what would you think? Like, I mean, if he just did Kirk as Hal Jordan, I feel like Chris Pine would nail it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he could do it. Maybe a little. There'd be things that you'd have to modify like you would for any role, but I could see Pine doing it.
Yeah. McConaughey, I mean, is that just because it's a True Detective thing and one of the creators created True Detective? I don't see Matthew McConaughey at all. He's too laid back. He's the wrong kind of guy. Ewan McGregor, do not see at all. Timothy Oliphant, maybe. I can almost see that. Timothy Oliphant and Chris Pine, I think, are the two that, for me personally, if those are the options, those are the front runners.
Yeah. Brolin, I don't know. When you think of Josh Brolin, you think of like gruff, grizzled, like,
but that's how
real rough around the edges.
Press release, right? That's how he's described in a press release. Chris mentions that Nathan Fillion's 53, but I mean, again, like, how much Guy Gardner do I need in my media? Like, I don't need that much. With Hal Jordan, I want Hal Jordan to really, like, have longevity. I really want him to be in multiple projects. And it's one of those things, yes, Sarah says Timothy Oliphant for all things. I'm cool with him too. So I don't, it's tough because I saw the article and then I got all the things and I'm like, maybe I'll just jump on and do a quick live stream about that news. And I just completely forgot and let it go. And here I am on the next episode that I'm doing, and people are like, what about the rumors? And I'm like, shit, that's right, I should be covering this stuff. So I'm thinking maybe I start doing shorts on YouTube. It's something I've never done, but if I could just do like a minute clip of just like that, perfect. Perfect. But I'll tell you this, once we start getting like Variety or Hollywood Reporter like reporting on actual casting, not just news, actual casting has been the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed. Like, perfect. I'm going to do shows like 2 minutes later.
There you go.
And I guess Timothy Oliphant is the same age as Josh Brolin. So if he does Hal Jordan for 10 years, then it's like he's 66.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Hal Jordan to be a boomer. Sorry.
I'm trying to think of younger actors right now that could.
People want Glenn Powell because he's like the hot thing and Maverick and stuff. Like, he looks like Hal Jordan in his flight suit in Maverick. That's fine. Who's the other kid? The kid in Maverick who's like the main lead that wasn't Tom Cruise. Not Tyler Sheridan. The other. Oh, was it Miles Teller? Was he was Mr. Fantastic? Like that. I mean, whatever. But I don't want it to. I want Hal Jordan to be like 30 or 35. Like, let's get a few years with this guy. He could still be, older. I don't know, dude. I trust the team. I trust James Gunn overseeing this. It's tough. It's tough. But anyway, let's talk about Hal Jordan. We already know has been cast. That's Josh Keaton. Was cast as Hal Jordan back in 2011 in Green Lantern, the animated series. Part 2, the Manhunter Menace, in which the Anti-Monitor in a different dimension, I believe. No, he's able to. Yeah, he starts raising Manhunters, the old police force, the predecessors to the Green Lantern Corps, which is great because that's set up in the first half of the series, the Manhunters.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, I started reading this and I started to realize that I was a little bit lost. So I actually went and read the last issue of the Sinestro Corps War, the series
Oh,
that was before this, and I'm
right.
like, this seems real familiar.
You need to now go back to Rebirth and just start it up from the beginning.
Yeah.
That Jeff Johns run from Rebirth till like Brightest Day, just phenomenal. The dude added so much to the myth and lore that it actually ended up showing up in this series. Things
Yeah.
like Larfleeze created by Jeff Johns.
Brightest
The
Day
color
is after
spectrum.
this, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, uh, if you look closely in the episode Scarred, I believe it's Scarred, she has the book of the Blackest Night book on her shelf with the black hand emblem on it and stuff. Um, like blue lanterns, red lanterns,
Mm-hmm.
Larfleeze, the book of the Black Lanterns. All this stuff was from Jeff Johns' run starting in 2005, and it all made it into this series because it opened up. He opened up this universe to like something like crazy, and it's nuts that nobody thought of it before. Like Sinestro was around and he had a yellow ring, which was cool because Green Lantern had it was a flaw in his yellow and his green power ring against yellow, and so that made sense. Okay, do the thing and then the fight. Why nobody thought to make a whole core of different color rings baffles me.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Jeff John started this thing, it was like, okay, he started it, he got everything in place, started doing the book, and it was like, issues. You're reading issues of Green Lantern. This is a lot of fun. There's weird stuff kind of popping in and out. Abin Sur's kid shows up, Amon Sur, and then they're like, oh, that's cool. And then he slowly starts building up to Sinestro Corps War, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, why wouldn't Sinestro make a whole core? Like if he can make a yellow power ring, why can't he make a bunch? And you're
Yeah.
like, this is rad, and Sinestro Corps is rad. And then at the end of Sinestro Corps, it's like, oh, this is what's going to happen in the future. And there's like a splash page of like every main lantern from the other cores. And it's like, makes zero sense why they'd taken something like 50 years to figure this out.
Yeah. That along the way, no one ever asked, okay, we've got this green one and we got this yellow one. What would a blue one look like? What would a red? Because was yellow always fear? Was it always willpower and fear, or
I don't know.
Because I feel like if I remember right, and probably from like Super Friends, they were just real focused on the colors. Like they didn't ever say that yellow meant anything, just that green was weak to yellow for whatever reason. Even though green is half yellow.
I don't like using the word retcon for this, but it's really the only word to describe what Jeff Johns did. Was like there was an impurity in the battery that made the Green Lantern rings not work against yellow. There was Hal Jordan became the entity Parallax, and he was a bad guy. Jeff Johns went in and was like, well, what's that impurity in the battery? Okay, it's a trapped entity of fear. It's yellow. And when Hal Jordan had his guard down and when his home city of Coast City was destroyed and his guard was down and his willpower was down, he's like, what if that entity got inside Hal Jordan through the ring and he became Parallax that way? And so he did these retcons, and he was like, the whole thing with Hal Jordan, Jeff Johns' main thing about Hal Jordan is he was not a man without fear. He was a man who was able to overcome great fear and decided that's what it is. Parallax is fear. He gave into his fear. And so he's like, okay, cool. And then it's like, well, let's start playing around with other colors. And he decided to do Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, violet. And he's like, okay, well, the Star Sapphires are mostly pink, but the star in the center of their uniform is purple. So we'll call that violet. And obviously it'll be love. And so it's like he started kind of figuring these things out and created the spectrum really thoughtfully, really like saying what like doing a rock paper scissors things, like, okay, what does blue do to red? What does blue do to yellow? What does yellow do to green? And they figured it all out. And just like this amazing mistake is, if you look at the Roy G. Biv spectrum from red to violet, it goes from rage, avarice, fear, and then right in the middle is willpower. And then you have hope, compassion, and then love. And so it's like this perfect thing that I don't know. I can see him as he was coming up with this, like sleepless nights, and being like, holy shit, it's working. And just like sitting there on a computer in the middle of the night. And it's like, it's 100% a retcon, but a super great retcon. And he did it in a way where nobody had to get killed. Hal Jordan kind of came back to life because he was Spectre for a while. And Rebirth's a nuts book. If you read Rebirth, I think it's 7 issues, and it's all about like, here's what's happening in Green Lantern now. Here's what I want to set up for Green Lantern. And he just like crams all this shit in there. And he sets up Sinestro, and he sets up Kyle Rayner, and what everybody's doing. And there's going to get to a point where I get the courage to ask Jeff Johns to come on here. I know he's not with DC really anymore. But I mean, dude, if there's any Green Lantern fan out there that I'd love to talk to, it's him, because I want to hear these stories. I want to know exactly what it was like coming up with this stuff, like coming up with things. If there was like any sort of, he's like, what should orange be? Like, is orange the last one he thought of? I was like, I don't know, like greed, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but just like the process of him creating all the oaths for every Lantern Corps, Ethan Van Sciver, who I'm just going to say is a real piece of shit.
So does Chris.
Coming up with all the symbols, I can say like his designs for coming up with the different symbols, the different characters in the main, the sort of main characters, your Saint Walkers, Atrocituses, Larfleeze, Indigo One, like everybody, like kind of creating the main sort of lantern for each corps. I agree with you on one thing, Chris, with this statement, and it's the latter half. I do not care for Ethan Van Sciver's art. I think his torsos are too long, and they all have weird cheekbones. It drives me nuts. I don't know what it is, but I don't mind because he is a turd of a man, a real garbage dude. But I can't fault him for like being really creative in the process with Jeff Johns creating this stuff. And some of that stuff comes over into the animated series, namely like Saint Walker and Larfleeze and Atrocitus are all creation from the Jeff Johns run. Brother Worth also from the Jeff Johns. Anything other Lantern Corps related is all Jeff Johns, and so it's like, that's why I love this show, because it's like, hey, we're gonna kind of give you a Cliff Notes version of what Jeff Johns is doing and introduce the different corps real simply. I think one of the highlights of the second half season is the episode Blue Hope, where we find Razor meditating on Odom, learning with the Blue Lanterns. I think this is a highlight. It's one of my favorite episodes, written by Jeremy Adams, who is the current writer on Green Lantern, the comic. And it's easily one of my favorite episodes. I love the Blue Lanterns. Love Saint Walker, named my car after Brother Worth. I have a little Brother Worth Hero Clicks on my review mirror. I have a Blue Lantern logo right on the back of my bright blue car. But what are your you have IMDb up, so let's go through these, and you can give me your thoughts on whatever the first episode is.
Before that, I did want to say too, just to tie a bow on the course thing, the yellow as the weakness for green works too, because yellow being fear, yellow is always been associated with cowardice, like yellow bellied, etc. And like he's
Right.
yellow, and cowardice comes out of fear, right?
Right.
So it's another one of those they picked it, and it's a happy accident that it
It's
all like worked together.
it's
Um,
weird how it was like so perfect. I don't know how he did it so perfectly. It it
Sometimes you just get lucky that things work out the way they do.
he must have been sitting on this for years. It must have been just years of like, because I know he was a Green Lantern fan when he was a kid, and just coming up with this forever. Like,
It depends, like, cause so like when I do stuff for any D&D game I run, or like the Sundered Veil, the show that I run on Twitch for Dice Thespians, I can sit there. I have a deadline. I need to run this game this week. I need to come up with what they're doing. I will obsess over it for the entire week and not come up with anything I like until like 2 hours before I need to run the game, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect, and I have to redo everything.
I feel like Jeff Johns would have had to go to like Dan Didio or so whoever was in charge of the comics then, and I feel like he had to just like lay down everything. I feel like he would have been like, "Here's the plan," because it's like I want to say Sinestro Corps War starts at like issue 30. Like it feels very concise how these things, like he had an outline for sure. And I adore his run. He's a dude who just like the fucking Snyder fans just threw him under the bus and raked him over the coals after sort of any issues with like Joss Whedon and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I've met him. I've had dinner with Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
He came and did a signing. I think I've talked about this the day Blackest Night launched at the comic book store I was working at. After we're done, after we got through the line and closed the shop, he went into the shop, grabbed any book off of the shelf that he had written, and just started signing them all, and just put them back on the shelf. And it was like super awesome. And yeah, we went out to dinner with him afterwards. I suggested that he read Invincible. I don't know if he ever did. I
I
said,
think you did
I told
mention
him,
at least.
yeah, I said, read Invincible. It's really good. I said, you just got to make sure you make it to like issue, I think it was issue 7 or something, the Nolan episode, the Nolan issue, you know what, the twist. And he's like, you got to wait. I'm like, trust me, once you get there, it's amazing. I don't know if he ever took that advice. I haven't spoken to him since. So that was whenever Blackest Night came out. I think it was roughly around the time the movie came out. So it's probably like 2010 or something. And I know he's a fan of the series. When the Green Lantern movie came out, he kind of stopped tweeting about it maybe like a week or two before. Like he was really hyped on it, and you could just tell based on his Twitter presence that he had seen the final cut and maybe wasn't as excited.
Yeah.
But I do remember him sort of interacting with Giancarlo Volpe on social media with the Green Lantern, the animated series. I invited Giancarlo to be on this show at some point. He's super busy, but he said, yes, let me know, keep me posted. So when he's not as busy, he'll come on and we'll do a super deep dive on the creation of this series, which is like probably easily top 10 favorite TV shows of all time for me personally. I mean, it's up there with Price is Right, you know, David Letterman, and you know, Green Lantern, and Lost. I guess Lost.
Lost might be in there.
But I think what's great about like shows like this, what reminds me of Lost, is it's serialized. Like the characters for the most part. I mean, in this you're only really dealing with like 4 main characters, especially in this half season, because one of the main characters may become a villain. I don't know if I'm spoiling this for anybody, but Aya does fuse with the Anti-Monitor, and just the character writing so good. I think at the Lost, if I'm talking about Lost, I think if like the show Lost had like 4 main characters, I think all characters would be amazing. And I think that's what I like about this show, is that Razor, Aya, Kilowog, and Hal are really nicely fleshed out, and they bounce off each other really well. And I think by the time you get to this season, or this second half of the first season, the writers are really comfortable writing these characters, and they're able to start throwing in foils. Like the first one is the new guy. Yep, the Guy Gardner episode, Dietrich Bader, who's now Harvey Dent in the Cape Crusader show. Dietrich Bader as Guy Gardner is perfect casting. He's so good as Guy Gardner. What did you think of the Guy Gardner episode and just Guy Gardner in general?
I liked it. I was disappointed that as the season went on, we didn't get more of him. Like he shows up, like he's in this episode, and then he shows up near the end
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was hoping we were going to see more of him, and I thought he was going to end up like joining the Interceptor crew and being part of it. That would have been cool, but he didn't. But
right,
Earth needed their Green Lantern. Yeah, Hal gets like a promotion to like
Honor Guard.
Honor Guard. Yeah, that's what it was.
Honor Guard's the thing in the comics, which is great. They're really paying attention to the books, which I love. And Honor Guard is essentially like a Green Lantern that can like patrol anywhere. It's not tied to a specific sector. They're free to roam and go, help out anywhere it's needed. It's a huge deal in Green Lantern lore, and finding out that Hal Jordan became an honor guard in this episode, I was very, very excited when it happened. And I think it's really funny that Guy Gardner, he's Eddie Haskell. He's just a complete asshole, but when the parents are around, he acts like a saint. And I love that everybody, including Ali Appa, he's like, oh, is that Guy Gardner? Like, they're so excited to see him. And I'm just like, fucking, he's Eddie Haskell in space. And it drives me nuts because he's such a dickhead to Hal. There is room in the comics, like when push comes to shove, like Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner work great as a team. Like when shit's gonna hit the fan, but like outside of that, like they're just always button heads. And I think they really did it really well. I know I was interviewing Giancarlo Volpe back in 2011, and he told me that Guy Gardner is his favorite Green Lantern. So you can tell that care was taken in the casting and and all that. Like that episode, sets up the Manhunters good, sets up the Anti-Monitor well. We get Tomar Ray in the mix. Tomar Ray is my favorite alien lantern from Sector 2813. He's the neighbor to our sector on Earth.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's one of my favorite like non-human lanterns as well. He's got a really distinctive look with his
fin and his beak.
Yeah, his bird head.
See, that's what I wish that Todd would do. Tomar Ray. I have a Tomar Ray here.
Yeah.
Such a cool, and he's in the movie. And he's one of my favorites. I absolutely love him. I think the next episode is what, Reboot?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have IMDb open because it's slowing down my internet. But
it says it's Hal reuniting the crew of the Interceptor to investigate the Manhunter threat. It has this.
We get Larvox. We get Chip.
Yes.
We get some good characters.
Yeah. Chip, like the elite Green Lantern, which you would not expect because he's a fucking squirrel.
Yes. So in the comics, he has a bow tie. Like he looks like he's dressed like a Chuck E. Cheese character. Like he's got like overalls and a bow tie. They've kind of made him more badass. I think Jeff Johns has a hand in that, kind of making him more badass. Or might have been dead by the time Jeff Johns came on. But there's a character named Budged, and he's like kind of a badger-looking Green Lantern. We saw in the leaked set photos of the new Superman movie that they did bring in a live-action squirrel as a reference to talk to Superman, whether that's Chip or not, I will lose my mind if Chip is in the Superman movie. Chip is one of those things that's like anytime that like Sideshow does a premium format HAL, like the Sideshow exclusive is a little chip that you can put in the rocks or wherever he's standing. I think it's happened like at least 2 of their premium format statues is Chip. Chip animated movie, First Flight. It's great.
Chase-A-Lon is great too, like the sentient disco ball.
Yeah.
I
Chase-A-Lon.
loved him in this show.
Comic relief, like those, and like Larvox, also comic relief. The Chase-A-Lon and Larvox and Gallius Zed, who's like Zelaya Zox, but a Green Lantern. He's like a big beach ball. Like those are Green Lanterns that you always see anytime the Green Lantern Corps is fighting and stuff. So as you're reading Blackest Night, you'll get to a splash page that like Ivan Reese did, and there's going to be a million Green Lanterns on the page. You'll see Chase-A-Lon, you'll see Larvox, you'll see Chip. Like those are always like the kind of like, oh, well, right now, look at my background here. I guarantee you there's somewhere in here flying around. I'm probably covering them with my face, but you'll start to get pages like that. And those are always the fun ones to see. It's great that they're comic relief, but I do like when they're out in the field later in the series. They are fully capable Green Lanterns.
They're still competent, even though they're a little goofy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. In Reboot, you also get a quick glance. There's a Lantern who looks like a devil. He's red with big horns, and he shows up in a later episode as well. I don't remember his name, but I like that. Reboot's cool. It introduces a new character, which, again, a character played as a joke, but later like redeems himself and is a total heartbreaking ending, and that's Lanos. Lanos, the other AI that they put in the Interceptor. And they call him Lamo. Absolutely adore that. I think it's annoying, and I love that it annoys our characters because it's not Aya. And how dare anyone but Aya be in the ship? And so he's set up in this way where you're just like, fuck this dude. He's so goddamn annoying. Like, and his voice, I am Lanos. Like, it's just like, he's the worst. But in the episode Scarred, when he sacrifices himself so that the lanterns can go free, it's like, oh, no, now I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Like, the show's really good at being like, knowing how to get us to be mad at somebody, but somehow end up feeling sympathy for an AI robot, an annoying AI robot, where you're like, oh man, bad for him. And I think it's mostly the voice acting of Josh Keaton being like telling Lanos like thank you and giving him reverence in the end.
He calls him Lanos. It's the one time he uses his actual designation. He calls him Lamo every other time.
Yeah.
It's the one time that he uses the name Lanos to talk to him rather than Lamo.
Right. Terrific show. I love this show so much. So Blue Hope is the next one, right? We get Brother Worth and
no, you're skipping one of my favorites, Steam Lantern. I loved this episode.
Oh, Steam Lantern happens before we get back to Razor. So do you know the story? Did I tell you the story of Steam Lantern?
No, I don't.
So at the end of the previous episode, Hal Jordan gets blasted by the Anti-Monitor. There's a tear in the sky, and like big cliffhanger. Join us next week for the exciting conclusion of the story in Green Lantern.
Oh wait, maybe you did tell me this.
Yeah, and then Cartoon Network just decided not to air it.
Right.
They like shadow banned Green Lantern from their channel, and it just wasn't there. Like I literally got up Saturday morning, turned it on, and it was like Adventure Time, and I'm like, oh, are they on a hiatus? And it was just like, I don't know what's going on. So I go to Twitter, and like the creators are like, I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. And I had purchased the season on iTunes because I want to support Green Lantern in the show, and I would rather watch it in HD without commercials and stuff, but like
Mm-hmm.
it would pop up after the episode aired. Nobody told iTunes. So I rushed to the internet and said, the new Green Lantern episode is on iTunes now if you want to watch it now before they take it down. And so you go and I watch Steam Lantern. Steam Lantern, what makes this one of your favorites? Are you a big steampunk fan?
No, I like steampunk, but I love I'm a sucker for this kind of alternate reality, like different interpretations of the character kind of thing.
Mhm.
So like the Elseworlds where Clark Kent gets adopted by the Waynes. Like I love that kind
Oh
of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So this was right up my alley. And to see how actually they're interacting with them, it was kind of like it's kind of like a DC Iron Man too, which Iron Man has always been one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So it made me think of Iron Man a lot. I liked everything about the Steam Lantern,
That's
the
great.
character, as well as like what was happening in the episode.
Gil Broom is his name, based
Mhm.
off Gil Kane and John Broom, the creators of Green Lantern, the Silver Hal Jordan. And what's nice is there's a reference in the episode to Alan Scott, that they had a Green Lantern there, and
Yeah.
he wore a red shirt and a cape. Total reference to Alan Scott. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see Alan Scott. I think people have done like sort of their version of what Alan Scott would look like in this universe and stuff.
And I
I
think
like
Hal
the
was
idea.
like, I don't know that one.
Yeah,
Like Hal's like,
yeah.
I don't know him.
Right. And what's kind of cool about it, it's a little far fetched, but I don't care because it's an animated series and they could do whatever they want. I was like, oh, well, it sucks that Alan Scott was in a different dimension. But by the end of the episode, they pull that entire planet into our dimension, which was great. Like they have the interceptor ripping open that tear wider so that they can fit the whole planet through. I thought that was pretty cool. I love a good blimp, like
Yeah.
all the blimp stuff, all the robots, very Sky Captain, all that stuff. So yeah, Steam Lantern is a really fun episode. It's kind of an aside to the main story.
Yeah.
And I don't think Steam Lantern comes back in any of the later episodes. But I mean, it's good. It's kind of good. Like, it doesn't disrupt the series at all. It's a nice little, okay, let's just like take a break from the normal and do something kind of interesting. Like we talked about this on your channel, Geek the F Out, how like we talk about like musical episodes. And I'm not one to want a musical episode or any sort of gimmicky episodes. But this was kind of a gimmicky episode that I really, really liked. I liked the gimmick. I thought the designs were cool. And
it's still kind of connected because it's because of the Anti-Monitor that he's there, and we find out that I forget his name, the guy that the Steam Lantern was fighting has like a deal with the Anti-Monitor, like and that he wasn't what actually sent the Anti-Monitor away when he came to destroy their planet. So it's still connected, but it doesn't really influence a lot of the main series, but it still has notes of it. Not the next one, which the next one is Blue Hope, but the one after that is kind of similar in that it doesn't really connect to everything else.
Is there anything in Blue Hope you want to talk about before we get there?
I can't. I know that's when they go and, like you said, that's Razor meditating with the blue lanterns, but I don't remember a whole lot else that happens in that.
Right. There's a giant sandworm. The Manhunters come. The Manhunters, who are fueled by the same energy that fuels the Green Lanterns, and of course, Blue Lantern energy heightens Green Lantern energy. So these are like souped up Manhunters. We find out that Razor and Aya, their relationship is really starting to, like, all the stuff that we were thinking about by the end of season 1, where Razor ended up on, oh man, there's so many planets. ended up with the Star Sapphires and Aya. Like, how did you get here, Razor? It's like, oh, because he loves you, but we're not going to say it just yet. We get some of the POVs from the Manhunters who look at Razor and see,
Right.
they see the pink in his heart and the pink in Aya's heart, and so it's like it was really a story where they're finally coming back together after these 3 episode break from those two characters together. And it just like solidifies that, absent growth makes the heart grow fonder. And so here we are, 3 episodes without them together. Now they're together, and you could get to see like, oh, they actually, based on Manhunter vision, they love each other. And the way Blue Lanterns suppress Red Lanterns, like Razor has to be really, really pissed off to take out that Manhunter with his red ring, where he does that spinny thing and wraps him up in like rope and then just like pulls him and shreds him into pieces. Like, just at the thought of one of those Manhunters hurting Aya. And now we're also getting, there's a scene where Aya takes a sort of damaged Manhunter into a cave and starts talking to him about, going to him for questions about, if you're a robot, can you feel feelings? And the Manhunters are just like flat out, just like automatons. They're not feelings. They have a mission, and they have one mission, and that's all they do. And Aya doesn't get the answer she's looking for, which is, it's all right to feel love, because that's really what she wants. She wants it to be okay to love Razor. And for us as viewers, probably think that's still kind of weird, a dude being in love with a robot. I don't know. But we find out some interesting stuff about Aya later on, and about, how much of a robot is she, and if she actually is a living being that does feel emotions. So the episode, I mean, do you have any thoughts? I know St. Walker playing the harp is a direct reference to Mr. Spock. I believe.
Is it?
Yeah, I've heard them. I've heard them say that. Yeah.
Yeah, because Spock plays a Vulcan harp on Star Trek. It's one of those things you're telling me, like, you're breaking down the episode, and I'm like, yeah, I remember all that stuff. But it's all like, it's so consistently, like, it feels like one long,
right,
like Green Lantern
you've watched it
animated movie.
Now?
Yeah, I've watched through it twice.
Yeah, I've watched it countless times, and yeah, I know the ins and outs. But yeah, I think St. Walker, it's an homage to Mr. Spock with his harp. The creators said that, like, specifically, like, that's what that's based on. And then I, during lockdown, watched Star Trek, the original series, and I was like, hey, now I've seen the thing that they referenced. That's great. So what's the episode after that you said was kind of a bit of a sidetrack?
The Prisoner of Sinestro. It's the one and only time we see Sinestro.
It's the bottle episode.
Yeah.
It's when WB finally gave the Green Lantern, the animated series, the okay to do a Sinestro episode.
Yeah, because you had said before that he was kind of off limits.
He was off limits. This episode's, I think, a lot of fun. I think maybe they had a time constraint, so they just kind of kept it to like pretty much a bottle episode. There's the attack on the Spider Guild frigate at the beginning, but it's essentially the Thing. It's John Carpenter's Thing in space. What did you think of this? What did you think of Sinestro? They
planted a lot of seed. Like, if the series had gone on, I could see it going to, Sinestro being a Yellow Lantern, and because we didn't see any Yellow Lanterns at all during all of this.
No, but they did set up the crystals.
Yeah. We saw blue, red, orange, violet, and green. Obviously, we didn't get white, black, or yellow.
No, we got the book of the Black Hand. We got no indigo.
Or indigo was the other one that wasn't.
Yeah, no yellow. No white or black. Um, I think Ron Perlman is a great choice for Sinestro. I think he's really imposing.
Hmm.
Kind of a great like casting choice. Like Ron Perlman's like a dude who probably doesn't need to do a 20-minute animated show as a like a one episode cameo, but I'm
Yeah,
glad he did it.
especially in when did well, it's a couple of years. Hellboy 2 was 2008, so it's a little bit after he was
Yeah,
in Hellboy.
but I liked him as Sinestro.
Yeah, I
Um,
like Ron Perlman in pretty much anything that he's in.
yeah, yeah. It's a
Um,
really fun episode. There's not a whole lot in it. We get a little more um, Razor and Aya stuff. Razor, who is possessed, starts coming
hmm.
on to Aya in a real creepy way, and that
Yeah,
completely confuses her. Where she's just when he leaves the room, she's just standing there. Literally, I think she's saying, "Processing,
yeah,
processing," and it's just like her emotions. Like she's I think the star of this half season, which is, I mean, Gray Delisle as Aya is so amazing. The work she did with Jason Spizak as Razor, like like when the turn happens, because it does happen, and we might get to that. What's after the Sinestro episode?
Loss, which I think is the one where
So she gets
she
poop.
turns off her emotions, which is as soon as she did that, I'm like, this is
Well, I
not
think that
good.
is Loss is the one where
Or no, they think she's
they're
dead.
fighting and they think she's dead.
Right.
It's another cliffhanger. Uh, uh, it's another episode. It's complicating their story, but yeah, the next episode um, is where she and Razor kind of come to a head. She shows up. She disappeared. Was able to upload her consciousness into Manhunter parts, and she
Hmm.
looks all jacked up and weird, and it's like kind of awesome. You're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, it's like body horror in a kids show. Like if this was a human character, this would be the most jacked up thing you've ever seen. And her like eyes miscolored, and she's got like the hunchback. It's like she looks like a crazy like Clive Barker like creature. It's really cool. And Razor's kind of an asshole about it. Um, and they get into a pretty bad scrape, and everybody's doing everything they can to defend the ship and fight the threat, the Manhunter threat, the Anti-Monitor and stuff. And Aya picks this time to be like, Hal, I really need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Something's going on. I can't process it. And he's like, we could talk about it later, but right now we just need to like focus on this, and mentions to just forget about it now, shut down your emotions, we'll talk about it later. And she shuts down her emotions, and fucking it's crazy. It's the big twist of the season. Aya without emotions goes and decapitates the Anti-Monitor just like a bullet. She takes the energy out of the interceptor, right? She pulls all the energy out and
I
creates
think
like
so, yeah.
essentially a bomb, and
Hmm.
just boom, boom, boom. Just it's like that action movie thing where they show the explosion like from three different shots consecutively, and you're like, oh man, like I can't believe she sacrificed herself. And then you realize, no, she's now become a motionless being who is now fused with the Anti-Monitor. So now she's like everything she's learned as an AI person, and everything she learned as an AI person, and all the power that she has, and then to shut off her emotions, it just, you're like, I get it. I get it.
Hmm.
It's like a breakup or something. People have feelings and they need things. And if you shut off your emotions, you start doing bad things. And it's a really good lesson for kids to be like, maybe don't shut off emotions, maybe talk it out. Um, Even if the situation is super dire, maybe find someone that can help you out. Because holy shit, the Aya Monitor is cool and crazy. instead of her green and white, she's like black and gray, and she's got like
Mm.
the dark eyes, and the voice acting. Grey DeLisle is just like cold, like it's the Aya voice, but just cold. And I this is essentially the last half a season. This quarter of this season is all about Aya and Razor dealing with the fallout. Again, feeling guilt for what he did, and just how Jordan and Kilowog trying to like pick up the pieces and make sure everything's all right. With the power out on the interceptor, they have no power and they crash land on a planet, and they have no source of energy, and their rings start losing power, and which means they can't use the universal translator, which is I believe a term from Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have no ride. And so it's a fun episode where it's Razor, Kilowog, and Hal trying to work as a team without being able to communicate. And I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's like I forget exactly what it was. There's like times where Hal has an idea and he's trying to communicate it to him, and you can see that Razor and Kilowog are both in their own way and like, no, that's dumb. And then Razor does that thing. He's like,
yeah. It's really well done. They wrote 2 languages for this episode. The episode's called Babel, which Razor and Kilowog's language is now, they like wrote an alphabet, and there's a way, I don't know if anybody's deciphered it. Maybe if I get Giancarlo Volpe on here, I can ask him like for the language key, so that we can go back and see what Kilowog and Razor are actually saying during those scenes. Because I don't think it's not just like jumbled words. It's not actually written. It's in a written language.
Yeah, it's not just gibberish or like sim language from the Sims.
Yeah,
and this is the one where they're driving, like they're in a wheeled tank vehicle. Yeah, something, and like they're just tearing up the countryside. It's like a countryside, but city.
It's like a hook and ladder, and like Kilowog's in the hook and ladder part in the back, and just like running into shit. It's a good episode. They fight a kaiju with no power. The kaiju has a bandolier of all the heads of different creatures and skulls and stuff that he's like conquered, including a Manhunter head, which it's been established. They use the same power as the Green Lanterns. So Hal was able to charge his ring, then Kilowog, and then Razor was just kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun. This is a really fun episode. We get a break from Aya. Again, absence makes the heart grow fonder. So it is nice that they do spend time, like we need to have time away from some characters at some point. So that by the time they get back into space, you can like pick up and see like the destruction she's caused and all the planets as the Aya monitor that she's absorbed, and just destroying galaxies at a time. It's pretty cool. We get to the episode titled Larfleeze.
No, Love is a Battlefield is before Larfleeze. It's where we kind of take a break from Hal, Razor, and Kilowog, and we see Aya pulls Carol Ferris to fight Atrocitus.
Which it's the reasoning behind it is funny because it's love versus hate. And Aya's still trying to learn, like she's so mad at Razor and doesn't understand why he doesn't love her back. And I just love that that's her solution. The solution of love versus hate, which is the better one, is to pit Carol, who's like used her ring in one episode. She's not constantly, using her Star Sapphire ring, versus Atrocitus, who is like the embodiment of rage. And it's just like, it's funny, but it's also
Carol
shit.
Carol turned it down too. Like I don't think she
Yeah.
left with the ring. So like she had it
Right.
that one time and then gave it back.
Yeah.
But Aya pulls her in to fight
The, the,
Atrocitus.
I like this episode. The only issue I have with this episode is that Hal needs to save Carol.
Yeah.
I would much rather them work together so that
Yeah.
she can really see what love was, but it seems like Carol gets saved by Hal too many times. I think Carol would be stronger in the comics. So is Larfleeze next?
Yes. Next is Larfleeze.
All right. So this is your introduction to this character, probably. You didn't read yeah.
Mm-mm.
What'd you think of that episode?
Well, he's a weird one.
Yeah.
He's not all there. He looks
Right.
like he probably doesn't smell real good.
Right. They animated flies
Yeah.
for this character. So in the books, like Larfleeze is real gross. Real gross. He's uglier than he is in the series. He's just more disgusting. He is vile. He's like Gollum, essentially.
I was confused. Yeah, and that makes sense. I was confused for a while because I didn't. It took me a minute to be like, oh, there's only one orange ring. There are no other orange rings.
There's a bunch of orange rings, but
he's got all of them.
There's no core members.
That's right.
So when you read him in the book, you're going to see that because he is introduced before Blackest Night. The entire Orange Lantern Corps is comprised of orange constructs being controlled by Larfleeze. Like, so the limitations in this series is he has like some glomuluses. Now, Glomulus is a character in the book, and he's the most interesting. He's essentially Slimer in the Green Lantern books, but the Orange Lantern Corps is a bunch of different things. And I feel like the limitations that they had with the budget of the show, they could really only make Glomulus, and they just made a bunch of them. But essentially, it's an entire corps of Orange Lanterns that Larfleeze controls from his home, which is kind of fun. Also, this is a little bit of a departure, like a side thing. It's mostly the thing that I like about these sort of side missions that don't really involve Aya with the Interceptor crew is that they're usually filled with character development.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally get some regret at a Razor. We get some compassion from Kilowog, saying, like, feeling sorry for the kid, which is a great arc from like the third episode of season 1, where they're just at each other's throats, trying to save those eggs on the ship. So it's really nice that Kilowog is finally embracing Razor and calls him kid. He's like, "Hey, kid," which is real nice because Kilowog lost his whole species, including his family, when Balavax Vic exploded and was destroyed. He's the last of his kind. And
I knew his family was lost. I don't think I realized that he was the last of his kind.
I think so. I could be wrong. I don't remember ever seeing another.
Now that you mention it, I don't think I have either.
Yeah. So it is nice, like, character stuff, and it's fun to see Larfleeze. Like, we all find out, like, after on Cartoon Network, after they would show the episode, it'd be like, join us same time next week for this episode, and it was called Larfleeze, and we're all like, oh man, they're actually doing it. So that was exciting. What comes after Larfleeze? I don't remember the titles.
It's Scarred, Ranks, and Dark Matter, which are 3 episodes, but really is kind of like...
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
Scarred is great. The voice actress that plays Scar, the character Scar, was Ursa from Superman 2, which is cool. Character in the book, also a guardian that kind of goes bad.
It shows that the Guardians had a lot more power than I realized that
they're very powerful. You'll probably see some of that in Blackest Night. Mm-hmm. Scarred is, I believe, a character created by Jeff Johns. And she says that in order to sort of create Aya, she took out a piece. There's a living being inside the lantern, which was at one point Parallax, is now Ion. Took a sliver of life, put it into Aya, so Aya is a living thing. So anybody that has problems with humans and robot love, it's okay now. There's a sliver of life in Aya. I think it's fine because we love the character so much. It never really bothered me, but I feel like they were like, okay, we need to sort of explain that, this isn't. I'm sure the parents would be like, what are you teaching my kids?
I don't know. I never thought of it because, like, growing up and watching Star Trek: The Next Generation with Data being an android who was seeking to be more human, like Aya made me think a lot of Commander Data.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Cool. Ranks.
And Data was one of my absolute favorite characters from Next Gen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Probably a lot of people's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's real popular. And Brent Spiner is a fantastic actor. So.
Right. During lockdown, we rewatched Night Court.
Yeah, so did
great. He's great in Night Court.
Yeah, he shows up in the reboot too, the one that's on Peacock right now.
Yeah, I didn't watch the second season. We gotta watch it.
I haven't watched the second season yet either, but apparently they show up. Him and his wife show up. Like the character and the character's wife show up in an episode.
Oh, great! I gotta watch it. So the planet Ranks is a planet. I was going to say is a real planet. Is a planet in the comic books. It's essentially a living sort of mechanical world. It's like Coruscant, but only like moving robot parts.
Like Cybertron.
And we find, yeah, exactly. And we get the Anti-Monitor head. We find the Anti-Monitor head, and he's like,
"Yeah,
hey, listen, guys, I have a little bit of change of heart. I think this thing should be stopped because I'm going to cease to exist now."
It's not so fun when you're on the other end of it, is it, Anti-Monitor?
Yeah. That episode's pretty fun because Hal is so determined. He's like, someone is calling me. We need to get down there. And this planet's doing everything to stop it from getting down there.
Yeah.
And he's like, they're about to get crushed. He's like, I'm Hal Jordan. You called me. And then it opens up and it's, all that's fun. We find out the plan. And we find out that, Aya's planning on remaking time. She's going to start time from the beginning. And, it's like, this is what grief, this is what being ignored, this is what shutting off your emotions does, is rewrite the entire history of the universe.
Yeah, because she said what, like, emotions were a mistake. Like, so
yes.
Everything needs to start over, and they need to avoid emotion. Like, essentially, biological life, I think, is what she was like, because emotions are a hindrance. So it just needs to be mechanical, artificial life, and the universe will be fine.
Jesus, it's a kid's show.
Yeah, it's pretty, like. It's funny because you look at it, you like you said with the art style and whatnot, you look at it and you're like, this is definitely, it's got heavy stuff going on for a kid's show.
Right.
But this was, this was 2013. So this is when you have to, unless you're on Adult Swim or you're The Simpsons or Family Guy, you have to like sneak that stuff in under the radar. Right. There weren't nearly as, or South Park, as many like the adult animated shows were all like comedies. There weren't serious animated shows for adults.
Right.
Or for families where you could watch it with your kids or watch it. Like this is one you could watch with your kids or like I did, watch by yourself and still find enjoyment in it.
Yeah. I don't have kids. I watch it all the time.
Yeah.
So this imagery of rebuilding the universe, where it's a giant hand around a galaxy.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I didn't quite clock what they were doing there. I assume there's more deeper Green Lantern lore involved in, or deeper DC lore.
It's 100% in the books. That was the beginning. That was what it looked like at the beginning of the creation of the universe. And it was probably written in like the 70s or 60s or something, but it's literally a giant hand. Like the drawings are kind of cheesy, but it's a giant hand squeezing a galaxy. And so when I saw that in this show, I'm like, holy shit, like the team behind this did their homework and would really was like, it doesn't make, I can't believe like there's no way there was a studio note. Like the studio must not have cared about this show, because I can't think of any studio being like, what's that? What's that supposed to be? A hand closing in on a galaxy? This doesn't make it what, like, you see that. The studio didn't once say, are kids going to get this? It's nuts.
They either didn't care or already knew that they weren't going to renew it, so...
But it literally looks like a god crushing a galaxy. Yeah. And that's really heavy. That's really heavy.
Do we know who the hand belongs to?
I don't think so. I think it's referred to as like the Hand of God. Like if you look up like Green Lantern Hand of God, like the wiki will come up and it'll be a really funny image of that. Any luck?
It's actually Green Lantern Hand of God, Day One. I think that's the name of a... Oh, there it is. Yeah, I see that. The Hand of Creation is what the Green Lantern animated series wiki calls it.
Yeah. It's one, I've seen drawings of it. I've read comics where that's in there. It's weird. It's real weird. Usually it's like flashbacks to like the Guardians. Do you want to present? I think you could share. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the animated series. It's such a... And they just Aya standing there controlling it.
And there's stars within the fingers, like...
Yeah.
It just makes me think, it's hard not to, whenever you just see a hand by itself, I think of Master Hand from Super Smash Brothers, which is the giant hand that you fight. But obviously, yeah, that's like, I guess, like you said, supposed to be the galaxy with whatever at the center.
Or the universe, yeah, I don't know. Wild.
Yeah.
They find out that Aya's, like, actually hasn't consumed a galaxy with living creatures on it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they find that there is a sliver of hope, and they all come to the conclusion that Razor's the one that needs to get in there and talk to her. And yeah, they go in and talk, and it's like another like super heady like conversation. I watched like the first half of the season ends with Hal Jordan trying to reason with Atrocitus instead of fighting.
Yeah.
And this season ends with, or this part of the season ends with a discussion between a robot and a Red Lantern, and Hal Jordan as a medium, like talking this out, talking out the implications of what it means to do this kind of thing. It's not a Marvel show that ends with a big CG cloud in the sky fist fight. Like
we do get a pretty big battle though, but we see a bunch of Green Lanterns working together on constructs, which was cool to see them all like.
Yeah.
And I think it's at one part Guy like they each have their different part that they're doing, like putting what they build like a massive cannon or railgun or something, and Guy is like, I do the bullets essentially.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They shoot Razor
yeah
into the anti-monitor. It's such a cool idea. But both half season finales are all about like talking it out, which is kind of nice and refreshing.
Yeah.
or a superhero show. Um, so what did you think overall for, you know, this half season of Green Lantern the animated series?
I dig it. Like I dig the whole show.
Yeah.
I
So
was
do you want
just
to
loving it.
know? Do you
And
want to
then
know and feel bad about what was going to happen in season 2?
yeah,
Do
tell
you
me.
want to know what didn't happen after this? So again, it was going to be
Absolutely.
divided in two 13 long episode arcs.
Mm-hmm.
The first arc being Sinestro Corps War, the second arc being Blackest Night. Like,
Would they have to change stuff though? Because a lot of the
I mean, they changed stuff in the first season, so
that's true.
I'm sure they would have figured it out.
Because
They already set up
I
the Yellow
didn't.
Element. They already set up Sinestro.
I didn't read the whole Sinestro Corps War, just that last issue of it.
Yeah.
But it feels like they covered that ground kind of already with the last half of this season.
Right. I think what's fun though is with like those DC crossovers like Sinestro Corps War and Blackest Night, they involve all of the DC universe and other characters
Yeah.
like Superman and Batman and everybody. What I like about this show is that it seems like they would just do the Sinestro Corps War without having any of those other guys. I believe they were also bringing in John Stewart, who got name dropped in this episode or in this season. They're going to bring him into the fold as well for the Sinestro Corps War. And it bums me out because I would have loved to see their version of it.
Yeah.
And then Blackest Night, like, I'm sure they could have set up deaths in the Sinestro Corps War, death of characters, like main characters, to bring back, you know, in Blackest Night. But that was the plan. The plan was Sinestro Corps War and Blackest Night for season 2. And
It's a
it
shame.
just sucks. It just sucks because it's like, man, over 13 episodes, they could have had a really good storyline with Sinestro Corps War.
Get James Gunn on the horn. Tell him he needs to get the band back together and let him have a second season.
From what I understand, everybody who worked on the show would be willing to do that. It sounds like they all have a fondness for the show. I know they still follow the hashtag GTLAS, GLTAS. Yeah, I mean, it's got to cost so much cheaper now. If you did it the same quality, which is fine, I'm sure it'd be much cheaper these days to pull it off than back then. Yeah. So, I mean, just come on, just make it happen. You know, I don't know.
Until that happens, and I think we talked about it last time, but we did see a Blue Lantern Razor spoilers for the new Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's a small cameo though. We see a Blue Lantern Razor and an Aya.
Razor also shows up as a Blue Lantern in Young Justice.
Okay, I've never watched Young Justice.
Yeah. So, but
that was something that they like from the very beginning. You knew he couldn't stay a red. Like it felt like he couldn't stay a Red Lantern the whole series and work with them. Like I was thinking that he would have. I was surprised he stayed a Red Lantern the whole show. I figured his switchover would have happened somewhere before the end of the first season.
Right.
But I'm guessing that would have been something in season 2.
Yeah. What about that last shot of the series?
It's when he's
Razor's lost Aya, but he thinks that he has hope that she's still out there, and he flies off to the distance, and the Blue Lantern ring.
The blue ring. Yep.
Yeah.
It was obvious that was going to happen, and it's nice to see it confirmed though in the new Crisis.
Yeah, that was one of those things where that was the finale, and the team would go to. There was like a bagel shop or some sort of breakfast place across the street from wherever they worked at Warner Brothers. And fans would show up and watch they'd throw it up the new episode on Cartoon Network in this breakfast place and watch it Saturday mornings with the people. And I remember someone had phone footage of that moment when the Blue Lantern ring comes up and everybody just losing their mind and going like crazy. It's such a great shot to end the series on hope. Has made the fans continue to hope for future episodes. There's something in my brain that just says, you know what? One of these days, we're going to see this story continue. I don't know why. It doesn't seem likely. It doesn't seem like Warner Brothers would care, but I think James Gunn would. I could see James Gunn like. I'm assuming he's watched this series, and he has to like it. It's so good. It's such a good show.
I mean, we've got Green Lantern showing up in the Superman movie and getting their own live action show. So who knows?
Yeah.
Stranger Things have been revived these days after many, many, many years of absences. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get a second season, or something that's like a spiritual second season. Maybe it's not a direct.
I've been saying it for years. Let's get a Sinestro Core War DC animated movie.
Yeah.
Take this, make it an 1.5-hour movie, do that storyline, and then do The Blackest Night. I would love a series, but if they could do anything to continue the story, I would definitely love it.
Because they that whole 3-part Crisis of Infinite Earths movies that just came out basically tied up like the most recent incarnation of the animated universe. Yeah. So who knows what they're going to do going forward.
Right. We'll see. If something happens, I'll be here covering it for sure. And I'll have you come on because you're the only friend I know that's watched Green Lantern, the animated series. There's a couple others. I know Mark has, Stevie has, my wife. She's seen it a couple times and loves it. It's not a bother when I put it on. So thanks for joining me. Want to do some plugs. I think this is the first time I actually put Dice Thespians in my description. I always forget to do that, but I made sure this time to do it. We
just season 2 episode 1 of The Sundered Veil just premiered this past Monday. The video on demand is available on the Dice Thespians Twitch channel. The Sundered Veil is an urban fantasy tabletop role-playing game. Well, the game is Monty Cook's World of Darkness. The show is The Sundered Veil. But it's a urban fantasy tabletop role-playing game with werewolves and vampires and devils and mages and
That's cool.
hunters, and our heroes work for a government agency called the IDA, the Intrusion Defense Agency. It's pretty cool. Go check it out. We try to like the big one obviously is, if you familiar with Critical Role, we're not like a 4 to 6 hour stream every week. Yeah. I tried to design this to be like between 2 to 3 hours, so it's a little more digestible, as something to just like either have on to listen to or whatnot, instead of being a 6 hour event every week. So it's fun. I enjoy it. And then
Geek the F out.
Geek the F out. We've got Trek Retrek on Thursdays. Not this week. We had scheduling issues and weren't able to record this week. But Friday we'll be covering season 5 of Lost. I'm 6 episodes in now. I'll finish it up on Friday before we stream. It's going to be fun. And then you should be on next Friday, to talk about the whole season with us.
Oh yeah, season 5.
Yeah.
Season 5. How deep are you?
6. Episode 6.
Okay, 6. Okay.
I messaged you about the we talked about the shizu shirt and the knives in the dishwasher.
Right. And you're like, why would you put knives in the dishwasher that way? And you're like, oh, for this reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so obvious too, the shot, because you just see the door fly open and the rack, and I'm like, that's what they were talking about.
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in real life. The racks just don't slide out.
No, they slide back like my mom's dishwasher.
Yeah.
You can't keep it out; it slides back
Yeah.
into the dishwasher.
I'll probably be back next Wednesday, and I think like I don't really have any kind of homework I want to do. I don't feel like reading any books. So I think maybe next week I'll just come on, grab some friends, and do some fan casting for the series. We talked a little bit about it here. Why not do it some more? So catch me next week. Follow me at Lanterns Live everywhere except X, because someone already took it and they don't use it, and it's a dumb page anyway. All right. Johnny, thank you for joining me. Thanks to everybody who joined the chat. We'll catch you next week. Beware my podcast. It's Lanterns Live.